Hello, everybody, and welcome. We are just taking a minute to let everybody get moved from the waiting room into the actual session, and we'll get started in a second. And while we're doing that, as you all heard, this is being recorded. Regular housekeeping stuff, you'll all get a copy of the recording afterwards, and if there are any questions, feel free to use the Q&A option to submit those, and we can go through them in line. Or if they are things that we don't get a chance to cover, we will address them outside of this as part of the follow-up summary message that we send. Okay, so I think I'm going to kill this share in a second, and then we can get to it. And all right, doing some of my own housekeeping here as we go. All right. So welcome. Here we are at the final webinar of our 2025 webinar series. I'm Mark Morrell, President of Carrier's Edge, and we have got a good one for you today. I'm joined by Victor Whatley of the ATA Comp Fund Alliance Interstate Risk, and we are going to talk about workplace injuries. Welcome, Victor, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Look forward to talking about something that's very near and dear to my heart and all our trucking companies for sure, I'm sure.
Yeah. So this came about because Victor and I were having a conversation, several months ago now in the summer, I guess, and it just sort of in passing, there was a comment that came up about 80% of workplace injuries for drivers happen while the truck isn't even moving. And I did one of those, hang on, wait a minute, say that again? And I was like, this is a crazy huge percentage. People need to know about this way more than they do because we see people talking and talking and talking about fleet safety, about safety for drivers, very heavily skewed towards what happens when the truck is moving. We talk about adaptive cruise control, we talk about anti-lock brakes, and we talk about stability and like all of this stuff. We got cameras, we got everything under the sun on the truck, but 80% of the injuries are happening in a totally different situation. So that prompted me to say, we've got to have a webinar and talk about this and go through the details and get into it. So we did a little bit of prep for this a week or so ago, and Victor actually has a couple of slides to go through, which I think is awesome because it really illustrates some of the things that we want to talk about. So with that kind of opening, Victor, did you want to start with these slides and kind of go through the background?
Yeah, I think that'll be a good place to start.
Okay.
Just kind of give an
All right. So I am in control of the slide, so you all get to see just how terrible I am with PowerPoint deck. But I think we've got the first one up here. So yeah, I'll hand it over to you for this.
Yeah, sure. So this is just an excerpt from a video that I created a couple years ago, but it was based off of an industry meeting where there was a group of employers and a group of drivers. So a group of carriers from in the company level and then drivers. And they were tasked to discuss or to come up. They were broken up into two different groups and come up with the top 10 risks the truck drivers have. And you can see on the left is the employers and on the right is the drivers. Uh, we could talk about this slide for 30 minutes or an hour just to walk through everything, but we're not going to do that. I wanted to highlight a few things and really the differences of what's important to them. At first, obviously, distracted driving, driver fatigue. That's number one and two for employers, and for drivers, it's two and three. So high up there, not a surprise at all. Very interesting that the drivers saw that the trucking lifestyle and related illnesses was number one, and that wasn't even on the list for employers. So that I always think, outside of this conversation, just in general, at the company level, we need to understand what is important to their drivers. So that just kind of highlights, the big disconnect for one. That's the first thing that really jumped off at me is that, hey, To drivers, that lifestyle related injury is very important. Employers really don't even think that much about it. I know that there's a lot of programs out there, and a lot of people are doing things with respect to that now. So that's a great thing and a great trend that we're seeing. But that does relate to the workplace injuries, as Mark alluded to earlier. We're a work comp provider, so workers' compensation is all we do in the trucking industry. So we see, and we'll get into some of these stats in a little bit, that most of these injuries occur when the vehicle's not moving well. A lot of that is physically demanding work, and so that lifestyle or sitting for a long time being stove up can really affect your claims and your workplace injuries. But this was just a general conversation that was had. Looking at it a little bit further, what we see that I thought was very interesting, is our number one area of claims didn't even make the top five in either one of these, and we'll
Hmm.
get to that in a second. But it's slips trips. If you look at slips trips and falls for employers, that's number six on their list, and for drivers, where is it?
Number seven.
Number seven. There you go.
Yeah.
So, that's a big area of risk that we see actual where claims come on, and people, it's not something that's thought of. Okay, we think of the trucking industry as top five, one or two usually in the country, in both Canada and the United States is the most dangerous jobs out there, and we all think of the driver risk. And indeed, I don't want to take in nothing that I say today. Do I want to take away from that? The driving risk is huge when the vehicle's moving is extremely important. We have a lot of claims there, and they're severe. However, if 80% of our claims are coming when the vehicle's not moving, then there's a big disconnect on and we can become complacent from that.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, and I think that kind of gets into your next slide, right?
Yeah, and
The
before we go on, also working from heights, that's number 10,
mhm,
and number eight. So very high, very low
mhm,
down on the list, and we see a lot of that, especially in your flatbed operations,
mhm.
where you're on top of a trailer. So
So this is not something that's really front of mind for either employers, like the carriers or the drivers. They're not thinking about this front of mind. So there's kind of a real disconnect between the reality of how many injuries are out there and how much people are aware of it or even thinking about it.
right, and if you're not aware of it, you can't really do much about it.
Yeah.
And what we see is complacency is probably the number one area that
Hmm.
thing that comes into play and have a negative effect on our insurance.
Okay. I'm
Mhm.
just thinking of a question I'm going to ask you later, so I'm just writing it down before I forget. Uh, so, very good. All right. Next.
Okay.
Um, sorry, go ahead.
I, I, like I said, there's a lot to unpack in this slide, but I also wanted to mention that drivers also had inadequate training and skills. That was very high on their list, number four, which
Mhm.
carriers. That's what Carriers Edge is providing a lot of, and for employers, it was way down on the list. So
Yeah.
drivers are out here telling you they're acknowledging, hey, we need more help, we need more training, we
Hmm.
need to develop the skills.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's look at the next slide where you've got some very interesting numbers as well. So yeah, take us through this one.
Okay, so like I said, we are workers' compensation providers. So this is just a snapshot of I think a 3-year period, and what we're looking at is you know it's a pretty broad perspective because we have clients that range from 5 trucks to thousands, several thousand trucks, and 600 some odd, five to six, between 5 and 600 clients or trucking companies that we insure. So we're seeing a lot. It's a pretty good stroke of what is out there in the industry. On the left is severity. When we look at severity, that's really the claim cost. Cost is, obviously our claims or our injuries. The cost is just one factor. It's the people that we're really concerned about, but cost is that's what we're here for, and staying in business. And so that's a good way to analyze where the severity is, how serious are these injuries. And then frequency, that's just your claim count. So if you look at the blue, that's your motor vehicles, and everything else, it says other, but basically you can think of that as when the truck is not moving, when the vehicle's not
Right.
moving, that's where your injuries are coming from. And so whether it's severity or frequency, it's a huge percentage. So, very long, sorry about that. 71% on severity, 83 on frequency. Um,
So that's really interesting because there's a lot of focus on reducing crashes and reducing, incidents that happen on the road while the truck is moving. And certainly now people are looking to cut costs anywhere they can. And they're definitely looking to reduce crash costs, but they're missing, in a lot of cases, missing a huge opportunity, it seems.
yes, and not to take away from the MVAs, as I mentioned, it's just that there's not if there's no focus on it, if it's not important to
Mhm.
you, it's not going to be important to your drivers.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
yeah,
And so I think the next slide then kind of takes us into the detail of that a little bit, right?
yes.
Okay, so yeah, we're saying other. Well, what is that other? And we can see that, yeah, motor vehicle accidents at the bottom of the pie chart there certainly are appreciable. We're not trying to diminish that at all, but we've got this huge other block here as well. That's very interesting.
Yeah, and slips, trips, and falls. The thing about this is these are all preventable, right? So your MVAs, you do have your four wheelers out there. You got weather, you got a lot of different conditions, and there are some of those no fault accidents that turn into injuries. Well, there is 100% of falls are preventable with a little bit of situational awareness. So when we see that the number one risk is slips, trips, and falls, a big, huge chunk of that is getting in and out of the cab, right? So entering and exiting the cab, we preach the 3 point contact, but it's really more than that, right? It's being aware, it's being in control all the way to the ground, the transition there, and that's where, or we see so many of these injuries coming from entering and exiting the cab, from a catwalk in and around the catwalk, entering the catwalk, climbing on trailers or on a trailer if you're a flatbed operation. And then really even the slips on ice, walking across the terminal at truck stops, potholes, all of those things, right?
So is it, I think I'm getting the sense from you that the number one thing is getting in and out of the cab. That they do it enough that they think they don't need to pay attention. People get complacent and they just kind of get, I don't want to say get lazy, but they just stop paying attention to it. So that's when the problems come up. Is that what you see?
Yeah, I think so. When I go out, I'm not a truck driver, but when I go out and get into a cab, I'm a little cautious about it because I don't do it all the time, right?
Hmm.
It's it, but I had one of my clients that they counted it, and they counted that 42 times during one day that a truck driver was entering and exiting his cab. That's a lot. That's a lot of
Mm.
exposure, and you're really climbing a ladder. So. Um,
Mhm.
and it's not a normal ladder, right? It's the step. I think the regulations say it's got to be 25 inches or less. Well, a regular step is a stair step can be 7 to 12 inches. A ladder rung is around 12 inches. So it's a higher um, uh, it's a higher step, and you don't have all the handholds that
Mm.
you do typically on a ladder in the same spots. There are handholds there, but drivers don't use them, or they're holding something, holding
Right.
holding a notebook, a drink, food, a sandwich, whatever it may be. And Mark, the thing that kills me that we see all the time and is exiting facing the cab. I mean,
Mm.
exiting not facing the cab. You enter the
Mm.
cab the same way you get out, facing your equipment, right?
Right.
How many times would you see someone going down a ladder facing outward? You never see that, right?
Yeah.
But yet we see it all the time.
Yeah. So they treat it like a staircase rather than a ladder.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you're talking about having the handholds and things to grab onto. Well, if one of those is the door, it also moves, which adds a little bit of complexity to things. Yeah, and you fill your hands with stuff and you're pointing the wrong way. Okay. A lot of things to be watching for sure. Now, you also mentioned getting into the trailers, and what are the things that you commonly see there? Like, is it just the same kind of climbing in and out?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the operation, whether it's a tanker's going to have a fixed ladder for you. Your flatbed, you really want to have a ladder. They have ladders that are available that you can purchase or go through the catwalk. Even the back of a trailer, there's there's often little proper access for that. You'll see people using tires and whatnot. So.
Mm.
Um, it's
So,
just
if the issue with the getting in and out of the cab is often the people getting out the wrong way, is it the same thing in the trailer where they're careful climbing in, but then they kind of jump down out the back?
yeah, I think so. It's that last step. That's a good point. You do see more of it coming down than a slip while you're going up.
Hmm.
That does happen, but I would say for sure you're going to see a much more frequency
Hmm.
the opposite
The
way.
one that I found really surprising on this slide is the strain at 20%. So talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so there's car really in your cargo operations. Is where you see most of that, and it's or pulling a fifth wheel.
Mm,
We always recommend using a fifth wheel puller, uh, but don't just give it to them and that's it. Train them on it, have proper way to use it, and we really like you to enforce that. Like say, hey, look, this is a requirement. You're gonna because it's not it's very easy just to reach in there and pull uh one time, but you're doing that frequently, you have a lot of opportunity for risk, and that's just shoulder and a back, to
hmm.
you see a little of both of those. um landing gear's huge, securing straps, there's proper ways to do that, and you guys did a really good job on the training that you have for that, that kind of walks through some of the things that we're seeing that we're talking
Hmm.
about, but really on the strains. Yeah, I would say securement. Sometimes you'll see a strain when someone's falling and they're grabbing onto something. So it could
Hmm.
be a fall, but they grab onto a handhold and they pull their shoulder on that side. But um,
Okay.
yeah.
So you mentioned landing gear. A lot of people think that's really simple and there's no issues there. So what comes up with the landing gear?
Yeah, so you get a lot of spinner syndrome, and then just trying to when you come across resistance, there's usually a reason for that.
Mm,
So maybe you got it in the wrong gear. Maybe there's too much tension. You can release tension, and just you're putting yourself in an uncomfortable position, and you're working too hard, and you're gonna cause that. So we have landing gear is I mean, we'll talk about some best practices, but really you want to have training on all these things.
hmm.
You don't want your orientation to be a um, a video and that's all, right? Or signing a policy and moving on.
Or just making a passing reference to it and then leaving.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Got
Yeah.
it. Okay. Um, Interesting. So, and I think your next slide digs into that a little bit farther as well.
Yeah,
Uh,
so this was cost. So this is that, and then this is count. So this is frequency. So
okay.
really, a lot of what we've already kind of talked through, but this is just a little bit of, and the reason we said we want to show this is because people think that, well, um, yes, MVAs are only they're the only severe ones, but well, you can
Mm,
have it's frequency versus severity, but really the numbers don't change that much. Where you see the frequency, you also see the severity, and I wanted to
mm,
mention, we didn't talk about this, but the struck by, we see a lot of issues with drivers not being aware, not being situational awareness. We preach that a lot. Um, there is when there's a lift truck in the area, when cargo
Mhm.
operations are going on, there's a forklift driver. A lot of those forklift drivers are 18, 19 years old guys that are hired from, at a shipper location or at
Mhm.
Home Depot or somewhere like that, where they're not they're focused on their job and they're not necessarily focused on you as the driver. So you need to be aware and be in the right place. And we've seen some very severe claims
Mhm.
happen around a forklift.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, those guys can go quickly. They're a whole different kind of four-wheeler to curse on a regular basis because they can be zipping around and not paying a lot of attention. So that is important. I think that's something that people don't really think about. And I mean, you're showing it as 19% here. That's significant.
Yeah, it is, and that we talk about no zones all the time for driving around a vehicle,
Hmm.
driving around a truck. We want to teach our four wheelers, hey, this is a no zone. This is the areas you don't want to hang out around a truck while it's on the road. Well, there's no zones in cargo operations as well. You never want to be on the backside of on the opposite side of the forklift. So if the forklift's on one side, you don't want to be on the backside because they can easily push something over on that side. So be aware, have eyes on them, and make sure you're communicating with them and they're seeing you. You have that visual.
Okay, so that bears repeating. It's not
Mhm.
just about not paying attention and some forklift bangs into you or backs over you. It is what they're moving around and the effects, the kind of knock-on effects of the other things that they're moving around. Because they, like you say, they could knock something over onto you.
Yeah.
So people
Um,
don't think about that much at all.
right. And it does not. We had a very severe injury where a forklift. It was lifting a um, it was like a large pallet of sheetrock and turn, and those are much wider than the forklift, and it turned, it hit, it doesn't take much, just a slight little bump and knocked the driver over, hit his head, and it was
Hmm.
a massive claim,
Hmm.
life-changing claim. So
Wow.
yeah.
Well, I think we've all seen those videos of the kind of horrifying forklift crashes where it's like a domino effect knocking over all of these shelve rows. And it just makes a complete mess inside of a warehouse somewhere. And you don't want to be on the wrong side of that for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, really good points. Things that people absolutely do not think about and that I can see these, even if they're not huge claims individually, if they start adding up, all of a sudden you start to get into a very significant spot with your loss run and or very significant spot in terms of things that you're paying out of pocket on these. It can really add up at a time when people don't have a lot of excess cash sitting around.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
Okay. So this is sort of broad strokes of what the causes are, what the common things are that you see. And what I think we want to dig into next, your next slide kind of gets into some of the details where I wanted to go with this that I found very interesting about not just the kind of things that happen, but who is having these issues. And you had a really good observation here. I'm going to pull up this slide about the correlation between driver tenure and the prevalence of crashes or injuries that happen here. So
Yeah.
this, I think, is really useful information for people to be aware of.
Yeah, and this is not specific to this is all claims. So you're talking about your MVA, all your slip strips, falls, MVAs, everything.
Hmm.
And it's very important to this is driver tenure at the company. This is not how long I've been driving. So,
Hmm.
you could be driving for 20 years, but you're new to, Mark Morrell trucking, and in that first year is where you're more likely to have an injury, an accident or injury, and that's there's a lot to unpack within that. But if you break it down even further, 9% of our claims are occurring within that first 30 days.
Wow.
Yeah, and 21% in the first 90. So if we always say, look, our goal is to get them past that 6 month period to get them, and I really see that the issue here is, and I get it, there's an argument that, hey, well, there's just a lot of turnover in our industry, right? So, yeah, of course, there's going to be a lot more in the first year because there's a lot more people who are driving in the first year with a company. True, I'll give you that. But no one should be leaving within 90 days, and you shouldn't have 50% or you shouldn't have what is it 30% in the first 90 days. Really so where I see the issue with that is it's the onboarding process, right? It's them
Mhm.
adapting into your culture.
Mhm.
We're big on culture, so having a safety culture, a company culture that well, you don't get that culture just through on your 1 day to 1 week orientation, whatever it may be. We see it
Mhm.
across the board kind of deal. It's a process that you've got to get them to buy into the way you do business and the way what is your culture, and so um,
Mhm. Now,
yeah.
I have a couple of sort of follow-ups or
Mhm.
bits to add in there. First, the assumption that turnover is high is something that is accepted in the industry, but not necessarily borne out by the data. Every year in the Best Fleets to Drive For program, we see dozens of fleets more. I mean, most of the finalists do not really have turnover problems. So it is possible to have a fleet, even a very large fleet. We see fleets with 10,000 drivers that are 30% turnover. It is possible to have that. So if people are using that as an excuse, oh yeah, we got high turnover, so it's going to happen. I would say that's probably a red flag that they're probably not paying much attention to things. But we are also seeing a trend towards putting more attention into an onboarding that is kind of a multi-phase onboarding that recognizing that there's a ton of things you got to learn about the company, even if you're an experienced driver, you've got to learn a whole bunch of stuff when you start up with this new company. So let's do some of it before people show up. We'll do kind of the basic stuff that typically is sort of online, gets done before people show up. Then in the first couple of days in class, it is focusing on things like company specific policies, getting to know the culture, getting to know the coworkers, like all of those kind of things, and then practical stuff, and then having a coach after onboarding finishes that can work with you in the yard, do road tests, and then get out there and be in some ways almost job shadowing to make sure that people are safe. That's kind of the trend of the sort of the best practices that we are seeing. And I think as fleets move more in that direction, I have to believe that these kind of injuries are going to start to shrink or that they're going to see less of that because they're focusing on not just the driving, but the culture, the way the company operates, and making sure that people are onboarded in a way that ramps them up more successfully. I have to think that these kind of things you're talking about people not knowing the culture, not knowing the business, and even if they're experienced drivers, they're having injuries. A good part of that is probably that they just have so many things that are new to them that they're not paying attention or that they don't really think about it. So, what comes out of that is they end up having a slip and fall or having a struck by or having a strain because they're not really familiar. They're not able to relax into the job and focus on the safety. Uh, do you see anything like that, that people who ramp up their drivers in a particular way have better success in terms of injuries?
Yes, everything you hit on, I agree 100%. And the you know you're setting that culture. I think it starts with the recruiter. So it starts with the first communication that you have with them. You kind of let them know, hey, this is the way we do business here. This is important to us here. So if the recruiter, we talk about the three T's of safety culture: treatment, trust, and transparency. Well, you're building that on every communication you have with them. So recruiters are telling them one story, and all they're talking about is number of miles they're going to get, and this that and the other. Then and not talking about safety. Then that's what you're going to get. And if you see that turnover more prevalent on people who don't have a culture established, and you're not going to establish a culture with just the safety person. It's got to be everybody. Dispatch driver managers have got to be involved in that. Everyone needs to be a part of that. But yes, big you know the having that onboarding, when you come on board, you're getting so much information. We call it information, overload, with like getting fed through a fire hose. So the last thing they really are that interested in on day one is the safety program. But yet you compartmentalize it into that area. But they want to know about the equipment
Mhm.
they want to know about vacation, their benefits, how they're gonna get paid, how frequently it is, what the equipment's like, that sort of thing. And safety is a big part of that, but you can't just leave it there. You've got to follow it up with we say bring them back in, within 30 days, 45 days to walk through all those policies and procedures you have regarding to safety. And an excellent way to do that is also obviously through like the micro
Mhm.
learnings and the LMS programs and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that a lot of companies in the onboarding, yes, they do talk about safety and they do spend a fair bit of time on kind of safety training, but it ends up being kind of rehashing the hours of service rules or rehashing how to do a vehicle inspection or going over distracted driving and road rage, cell phone use policies. And something like this often ends up kind of being relegated to a policy. You must always have 3 points of contact and never jump down from a trailer when getting out of it. And in the context of the broader orientation, that ends up not having very much weight, and it ends up kind of getting lost. As oh yeah, also make sure you don't slip on things, and dress appropriately so that you're not having slip and fall issues. Uh, that is going to create something, in the subconscious that it's not as important. Going to put this in the area of the, oh yeah, also that, but it's not as important as the other thing. So it seems like there's a gap there, that maybe people should be focusing a little bit more on this kind of training as part of their onboarding, making sure that they are watching for it when they're doing yard skills practice or a demonstration around the vehicle with the new drivers. As much as, do you know how to test your air brakes? Do you know how to get in and out of the vehicle safely? And I think a lot of people don't really do that, and that's probably one of the disconnects we have here.
Yeah, I like you got a road test, right? They're there. You're gonna about to go through the road test. Lay it out before they even walk, before you even leave the office, before you walk out there. Say, hey, listen, I'm about to have a road test. Whether if I'm leading it, I'm gonna tell them this, or you're about to go out and meet Joe, and he's gonna take you this road test. It's gonna be the quickest road test you've ever been through if you don't get in and out of if you don't get in and out of that cab properly. So, hey, this is a big deal for us. And guess what? The reason is, you know, 5% of every claim that we have is from entering and exiting the cab. 34% of all our claims are entering are slips, trips, and falls. So this is a huge deal. So
Mhm.
we want you to understand that you're about to go on the road test before it even starts. It starts before you get into that cab. So pay attention because they're going to be looking at that. That way, you're kind of laying it out there. You're saying, "Hey, listen, it's important to us," and they're aware. You want them to be aware because if they can't do it when you're telling them it's important, then they're never going to do it when you're not looking. So
Interesting.
yeah,
So that's a really good point because I find a lot of these things I don't say much and I kind of watch what happens. Just see what they do when they're not being reminded of it. And it tells you a ton about people, and often they make all kinds of very illuminating mistakes. But your point is a really good one, that tell them that it's going to happen and then see what happens. Yeah, watch
yeah,
what
and
happens.
and I like it both ways. I say set it up that way, and then but what you're talking about, I want everyone in the company to know what slip, trip, and fall. No, I want them to all know what 3 point contact is,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
We use it all the time. We say it all the time, and it becomes just word. It goes past us. But the person in accounting, the driver man, everyone needs to know that and tell them how important it is, so that they can do what you're saying is watch. So you're gonna have that opportunity that you always see the driver leaves and you don't have any eyes on them. Well, you do have eyes on them if you're not doing anything when you do have a chance, do have eyes on them, then you're never going to change that behavior. So you do want to watch them without
Hmm.
them knowing and let them know. And hey, go out there, have a $25 gift card. go out there and say, hey, listen, I just noticed you getting in and out of the cab the right
Hmm.
way. Man, that meant a lot to us. That's important to us. That is. I want you to, take this and whatever it is. Just it doesn't have to be monetary. Pat on the back.
Yeah.
Let them know something. But
Yeah, well, a lot of times now fleets have got a coaching team, or they've got driver mentors, or other kind of senior drivers that have got some sort of designation like that, that are not just seeing each other at the terminal. They're seeing each other out on the road or at client sites and things like that, shipper points. And so they can be watching for it too, if they understand the importance of it, and if it is sort of built into the culture that it is regularly reminded and pointed out, and like you say, recognize people that do a good job with it. So that there are lots of things that you do to kind of make sure that people keep that up. Um, yeah, and I'm kind of watching the clock here. Again, if anybody has any questions, definitely let us know and we can go through those. But I do want to jump to a couple of the poster things that you had, which highlight some really important bits that I think we want to talk a little about. Because you're talking about 3 points of contact. Yes, that is certainly very important. But I think what stuck out for me here is the other things to keep in mind while you're doing that. People think 3 points of contact, well, I'm stepping on these steps on my heels, so I'm going to be fine. But no, that's not really the way to do it. You've got to step on it properly. You got to have your hands free of things. It's not really a point of contact if it's two fingers and the rest of your hand is holding a coffee. That's kind of what you're sort of getting at here, is make sure you actually do it the right way, right?
yeah, I mean, we have a written policy. It's got, it's entering and exiting the cab using 3 points of contact, but it's 8 steps to it, right? And
Mm,
it's, wear the proper footwear. We'll talk about that in a second. Know the equipment. Every piece of equipment is different. So there's different steps and at different heights and different handholds, right?
mm,
We talk about the 3 point system, obviously, but it's that last step, that transition to the ground, not looking before you do it. Always face the equipment getting out. It's more to it. So we use that 3 point contact lingo, but it's really just being in control all the way to the ground, all the way up into your seat, all the way up onto the trailer. Oh, catwalks are very tricky as well because you also often just have one place to put your hand with on one side, if that. So you got to be careful about that. So keep your hands free, all those things that you mentioned. But it is definitely more than just the one
mhm,
thing. The thing to the left there, that the yellow, that's a sticker. We
mhm,
provide our fund members that they'll put up on on the truck or on the catwalk. And then the QR code goes to like a 5-minute video, just about entering and exiting the cab. So,
mhm, mhm,
but two things that you mentioned, pre the one on the right is footwear. Okay.
mhm,
I It is very easy to convince someone at a trucking company that is a flatbed operation that they need to have work boots. They need to have some sort of work boots. We don't push. You got to have steel toe, right? But you've got to have non-slip boots, work shoes of some type. It is often not as easy to convince even a safety person at a dry van operation because they say, well, they can wear tennis shoes, it's they're not doing heavy cargo. We want them to be comfortable. Yeah, this is like 2025. There are comfortable safety shoes that are out there, right? But it is very even the high end, the OC, the on clouds, the comfortable shoes, they're not they're not slip resistant. Very few of them. There may be a model or two out there that's slip resistant, but that rubber sole is going to wear quick. You've got no ankle support. But mainly, a dry van operation, they're walking around fuel islands. They're walking. They have ice. The same exposures to ice,
mhm,
to oily surfaces. Um, and we see a ton of it. And so we have this poster here. We call them Safety Simon, but no tennis shoes.
mhm.
We want to have slip resistant soles. You got to check them.
Hmm.
You gotta keep an eye on the guys when they come in when they come into the terminal. Take a look at their shoes.
Hmm.
Use that gift card at that point. Do a little incentive program. Don't do the slippery cowboy boots. We see
Hmm.
them all the time. That's just you know, and 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 the worst, honestly, the worst that we see is the sliders, the Crocs and the sliders.
Yep.
Um,
Well, nothing says professional like someone working in Crocs, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we had a question. Can we provide these as separate files? Yes, we can provide all of these. I assume that these are distributable, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll do that as part of the wrap up. But yeah, I want to reiterate the point about footwear because the traditional sort of mindset in the safety world is you need the safety shoes, you need the steel toe or the steel base, and like you say, that's often not actually the best situation. That's not the best footwear. The non-slip is far more important. And like you say, there are definitely comfortable versions of these. If you don't like wearing it while you're sitting in the truck, fine. Don't wear it while you're sitting in the truck, but put it on before you get out. And when you're walking around, uh, it is definitely going to make a difference because you don't know what you're getting into. Yes, fuel islands are not great, but you don't know what you're going to find when you get to the shipping point, where you're dropping things off. You don't know what your situation is going to be. You don't know what the situation is going to be in the warehouse or any of the other places that you're going. So why chance it? Wear something that is going to be require people to wear something that is going to be non-slip. And I'll tell you, one of the things that we've seen, and it's been increasing about the last 7 years in the Best Fleets to Drive For program, more and more fleets are providing an annual allowance for these things because it is something that wears out. It is a cost, and you want to make it easier for people to do something that is going to save you money in the long run. Give them some sort of a cost allowance or vouchers, work out some deal with somebody to make these available to drivers, and it saves a lot. We're seeing that's become pretty common, the annual shoe or boot allowance, but also we're starting to see people just providing ice cleats as well and other things that are going to help in that area. So you mentioned earlier fifth wheel pullers. We're starting to see those that are being provided because yeah, it costs money, but it doesn't cost anywhere near as much as the claim does.
Yeah.
So, annual boot allowance or shoe allowance, ice cleats in areas where people are going to have to deal with it. Are you seeing much of that in terms of fleets providing those things?
Yes. So the fifth wheel pin puller, we recommend a policy for that, train them on it, and provide it to them. We give those out to some of our fund members to get them started to help them. And the drivers, not only is it you're not getting as dirty and greasy reaching up under there, so
Hmm.
that they like it if they learn how to use it the proper way. We do see that. We do see we one of our members recently had Cintas, which is the like a uniform company. I didn't
Yep.
realize they did that. They brought a truck out and they've got like a shoe fitting station.
Mhm.
And they brought that out to the terminal, and all the drivers got fitted for boots there. And think that they gave them like a voucher that they can use there. So, some people don't. You can have a look. I say dress for success and dress for safety, right?
Mhm.
So you're
Mhm.
you're also they're also representing your company, so you want them to look sharp. It's not just the boots, it's not just the shoes, it's
Mhm.
everything. The way that they look, and they're going to feel better about themselves. But we do see some of that, some of the voucher program. Obviously there's drawbacks to that because you know people are gonna but like you said, it's like it's $100,
Mhm.
or give them and you if you depends on your situation. Every company's different. I mean, if you've got a local store that they can go into, you give them guidelines on what they need. um but
Mhm.
the worst thing that is to have the policies and not enforce them. And you
Yeah.
see that all the time. And
Yeah, for sure.
So,
Okay, so that leads me into one of my favorite questions to ask people on these sessions because it usually is a lot of fun. What are some of the worst things that you see when you go out evaluating fleets? You know, what are the things that make you cringe, or you know before you walk in that you're going to be unhappy there?
well, so it, terminals, we're talking about slip strips and falls. Terminals who they're not, and I get it. It is very difficult to maintain a yard or a terminal, depending on, especially depending, if you're a flatbed operation. But potholes that don't get fixed, don't that people just blow off and they don't do anything about. Really, the worst thing is when you're out there, you're talking to someone, you're standing outside talking to someone, you see driver come in and out, and and they're and you see some behavior that's wrong, and no one does anything about it. They don't say anything like, "Yeah, look at old Joe over there, man. One of these days that's going to be an accident," or and it's a very simple thing, and we laugh about it. It sounds silly, but I was in it. We had a scenario where strong company with a great safety program, and we're at one of their terminals just watching them, and within 10 minutes you see four different drivers exit facing forward.
Mhm.
Um, and you know, if you're not stopping at that point and just going and having a conversation with them, or say, well, that's I'm going to need to say something to safety so that they can get that taken care of. Or, well, I'll talk to their dispatcher because, I don't want to really be the one that goes up there and comes down on them. Well, you're not coming down on them. If you walk away from me and I'm doing something bad, you don't care about me, right? That's how you drive turnover, is not caring. So if you show that you care, if you approach them the right way, then um, it can come across. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
No, you
that's
definitely did.
yeah.
And kind of a follow-up, I remember doing one of these sessions with another uh, set of insurance risk assessment guys, and one of the things that they said is that they would show up if they're going to do a review of a fleet. They'll show up about a half hour early and just sit in the parking lot and watch what everybody's doing and see, are they scrambling to prep for the review, or is it business as usual? And the people that are scrambling to prep for it are kind of removing hazards and putting out safety mats and things like that. And are they cleaning up the yard, or is it business as usual because they're already thinking about safety? And it tells them a lot. I thought it was a very crafty and a sneaky way of going about things, but I think it probably tells you a lot as well about how the fleet acts and how they think about things. So when you go out to do an assessment, is there anything that you kind of notice, walking from your vehicle into the office? Are there things that jump out at you, even at that point, that'll say, oh boy, these guys do not have it together? Or
Yeah.
conversely, these guys really have it together.
Yeah, to your point, your first point, I've had owners say, "Hey, come out anytime. Don't tell me. I don't want to know,
Hmm.
but I want your critical." And that it's a partnership, right?
Hmm.
The safety person and your insurance company is a partner. They're not wanting. They're just they got the same intention. And that's to keep your drivers safe.
Hmm.
So yeah. Um, I like that, and I think of it as I don't know if you're a hunter, if you ever go out and hunt, even if you don't hunt, if you're hunting with a camera, right? Just sitting back and watching the deer come out into a field, and
Hmm.
just watching that behavior, it's fascinating. So when you're to your point, that's what a safety person should be doing, or someone who's caring is just watching that behavior. You just want to, step back. When we go in and we'll do like an mock OSHA inspection in a shop. Well, all those things are important, and I'm going to give you a write up, and I'm going to share with you the information. But what I really want to do is just see how the people are interacting, how they're going about their work, and what they're, are they situationally aware of what's going on. Those are the things that you really see, and there's nothing like talking to a driver, right? Just talk to them, get to know them. You're going to find out more than you want to know, but you're going to find out a lot about them. That's going to help. help the rapport that you have with them, but also you're going to learn what's important to them and how they view your safety program and what the risks are. They're going to tell you really
Hmm.
what you need to be concerned about.
So it's almost kind of useful before you even go into the fleet to talk to some of the drivers and see what's happening there, get their take on it. Or,
Yes.
are they noticing that the terminal is super clean today and it isn't normally, or is it always something that people are paying attention to? So potholes are a good one that you mentioned, but uh, I would guess other things like broken fencing or things that are kind of,
Yeah.
just
The
anything that looks
creepers,
like
are the
they're.
creepers stored properly, or they're housekeeping is huge. That's really where you get your most of your injuries is poor housekeeping. So if they're if if it's there's exposures out there that if no one's doing anything about, and it's a reflection of what's important to the people there. I mean, we're all in working environments, right? So it's
Mhm,
not going to be
mhm.
perfect, but if you're not, being cautious of it, you can tell when something's been cleaned, an hour beforehand versus what
Yeah.
regular business is like. So.
Okay. Is there anything that you see? This is a very hard question, but is there anything that you see sort of when you go in to do a review that makes you think, okay, these guys have got it in hand. If they're doing this, then they must be doing this. If they're doing this, then everything is probably going to be okay. That makes you feel very comfortable or gives you a sense that they really do take it seriously.
Um, the driver managers and the dispatchers, if they're engaged and they have a good rapport, with the drivers, they enjoy. There are people that don't like what they do, and if
Mhm.
and they don't like drivers, they don't like that interaction. Well, if a driver manager is the number one person who's talking to the driver, they're the boots on the ground and one of the most important people in your company to set your culture and to set your safety program apart. So, a conversation with them, understand what's important to them, it tells a lot about the company, and if you're talking to a driver and how they feel about them, it goes two ways. One thing that I should mention that kind of an odd or not an it's not so odd, but it's a good little process to have in place, especially for like a flatbed operation, is is a driver and dispatcher communication protocol, so that anytime that they have to, you want to avoid getting on the trailer at all, if at all possible, but when they do have to do that, a communication protocol where they go and they let the dispatcher know. So they're making a phone call saying, hey, you get the scenario where you're at a shipper, you've got to tarp the load, they won't allow you to do it. And we had this claim happened where the driver went off site, pulled over to tarp the load because they couldn't do it there. I get it. There's a lot of things that you can try to put in place on the front end to avoid that from happening, but you get in those situations. So he goes up and falls off the load. The driver was down on the ground for hours before anyone even knew about it. And that's because, and so when you have this protocol in place where they're calling the dispatcher and they're saying, hey, listen, I've got to tarp the load, about to have to go up here. First of all, dispatcher goes through a list of questions just to make sure there's no other alternative. Hey, have you considered this? Did you do this? Did you? Okay, got to go up on the load. Gonna tarp this. Give me a call when you're down, because that way you're not going to sit for 4 hours on the ground with a bad back or a head injury or something like that. At least someone knows so that they can get someone out there. We created a little video that kind of walks through that. It's on our YouTube channel. That if you go in and look at it, you can see a lot of the videos that we have. But that's a good process.
That's a really great point. And I think it's one of those things that people don't really think about until it bites them in the ass, like what you're talking about. Some driver is down. They're out on their own. If it's not a team situation, they don't have another person there. If they're injured, who's going to know about it? It could be a long time until somebody comes by and discovers them, or they are able to make some contact on their own. But if you've got that process there where there is a communication happening, and yeah, it's you call me in when you're done, and I expect it's going to take a half an hour. So if I haven't heard from you in 40 minutes, I'm going to be contacting you, or we're going to have some escalation process, or we're going to have something that we know we're going to do in that situation. But I think that's a great point because like you said earlier, culture is the number one factor in great safety. People that have good cultures tend to have better safety because they're watching out for each other, they're focusing on it, like all of the things that you mentioned. But it also is, it's going to be a good escalation process. It's going to be a way of handling these things, and it's going to be a way of communicating and building that culture between the driver manager and the driver that, okay, we're in this together. You may be the one that is stuck out there in the rain trying to tarp this thing, but I've got to watch out for you and make sure that you're okay. So if I don't hear from you, we're going to do something about it. That's a great point to bring up.
Yeah.
And that is kind of going to run us pretty much to the end. We've got um, just a couple of minutes left here, and you did reference this earlier, but I will point out again the course that we've got, the ergonomics course that is really digging into all of these issues. For any of you that are customers already, absolutely have a look at it if you haven't already gone through it. But it's a very good course, and anybody that isn't yet a customer, you can certainly respond to the follow-up message, and we'll hook you up with a demo to try it out. But all of these issues are very important and things that can make a huge difference in the claims history for a fleet, and can make a big difference on the bottom line as well. So, any final thoughts on this before we wrap up for the day?
Thanks for having me. I did go through your training and it's fantastic. It really hits everything. I think it would just be a travesty for someone to have access to it and not use it. So I would say make sure that you make that a part of your process if you that because it's a relatively new program that they put out and it's great. We do have a suite of videos. They're available on our YouTube channel, but they're so if you want to look at some of our videos, you can just look up ATA Comp Fund or Alliance Interstate Risk on YouTube and find them. But we do have that suite available to our mutual clients with Carrier's Edge.
Mhm.
So we don't always know that you're with Carrier's Edge. So if you are with Carrier's Edge and you're with us, let us know so that we can you get access to that suite of videos to you within your LMS platform at Carrier's Edge because that way you can have the
Mhm.
documentation, all the benefits of having a good LMS system.
And I will say your videos are awesome. They're fantastic. They're entertaining. They're informative. They're really nice bits of content. So absolutely, everybody should have a look at those. And how do you get access to the videos if you are Canadian? So yes, it's on YouTube, so we can sort you out with that, and that the YouTube content can be added into our system as custom content, so it's still available there for everybody. So with that, I'm going to put up the final slide there, and thanks everybody for coming, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.